You are listening to Mining Stock Education, where you'll learn from the top leaders in the natural resource sector and uncover quality mining investment opportunities.
And finding this one, the Fredriksson, it's also very exciting because as you will have seen in the news release, we have some great thicknesses. We average about 10 meters of thickness in 3 holes. We've only put 3 holes into it, and with really good high-grade massive sulphides. But one of the things to think about, and I put that in the release, is that when you imagine the thickness of these beds, it's like mining a 2.5 to 3-story high building. That's the thickness of the bed. So you can build tonnage very quickly.
Thank you for tuning in to Mining Stock Education. I'm your host, Bill Powers, and I was thinking this week about something Ross Beatty told me about 2 years ago when I interviewed him in person at the Sprott Natural Resource Symposium. He said one of the things that he loves about the mining industry is its capacity and ability to make wealth for its investors. He said it's one of the few industries where you can spend $50,000 and that $50,000 of a drill hole might discover something worth $1 billion. And that's how he's made his wealth. That's the reason why I invest in junior mining exploration companies. And one of those companies is a sponsor. It's Norden Crown Metals. Joining me today is its CEO, Pat Varas. He's a returning guest. If you didn't hear my first interview, I'll put a link to that in the show notes. But we're bringing Pat back on the show today because the company had some excellent results out this morning. So Pat, welcome to the show. And you've discovered a Broken Hill type deposit. And to understand the significance of these drill holes, we need to understand first what a Broken Hill deposit is. So walk us through that and talk about the significance of these holes, please.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Bill. So Broken Hill, it's a huge deposit in Australia. It actually was the birthplace of BHP, Broken Hill Proprietors, or the huge multinational mining company that is actually the biggest mining company in the world. Well, that's their birthplace. This is the deposit that put them on the map, and it's a huge deposit. It's it's something like 280 million tons of very high-grade silver, about 150 grams per ton silver, and about 16% combined lead zinc. But when you look at the history and the tonnage and the grades, and it's one of the most valuable deposits in the world, and it has a huge contained amount of metal. It's probably is the biggest holder of metal in the world. Of course, it's been mined for 120 years, so a lot of that metal's been gone, but it's still being mined in its surroundings. By newer explorers. South 32 does a bit of mining in that area. And so we're very excited. We're excited because, we knew, or, we've discovered a Broken Hill type deposit that was mined. Historically, it's called the Stolberg, and it's basically just south of our property. And that deposit, had very good grades of about, I think it's about 6.7 million tons that they mined out of there. But it's hosted in one of the hosts for Broken Hill type deposits. And there's very few of those around the world. Like, there's a few in South Africa. There's obviously a few in Australia, and there's a couple in Sweden. And but there's 2 hosts of those types of deposits. In calc-silicates, and I'm going to get a little technical, but hopefully not too technical, and also in something called banded iron formations. So why we're excited is because banded iron formations are magnetic. They're magnetite. You can trace them by doing geophysics. So if you can trace them, you can do airborne surveys, detailed airborne surveys. You're going to know where those beds are because they are sedimentary rocks. And in fact, all of these deposits, they're called sedimentary exhalatives. And so we're excited because the mineralization is associated to these banded iron formations. And so we have something like 21 kilometers worth of these banded iron formations on our property. So that basically gives us a huge exploration blue sky. There's probably a number of deposits to be found in that belt. And finding this one, the Fredriksson, it's also very exciting because, as you will have seen in the news release, we have some great thicknesses. We average about 10 meters of thickness in 3 holes. We've only put 3 holes into it, and with really good high-grade massive sulphides. But one of the things to think about, and I put that in the release, is that when you imagine the thickness of these beds, it's like mining a 2.5 to 3 story high building. That's the thickness of the bed. So you can build tonnage very quickly. And obviously, we're going to need to go back and really continue to drill for sure. But very exciting results, good grades, great thicknesses, and the fact that they're broken hill type deposits. The ones around the world, a lot of them are very large. They're in fact, there's not that many of them. There's not many people exploring for them, and the ones that are out there are big deposits, very significant.
So these holes brought back silver, lead, and zinc, and they were about the true width, correct? What you reported was close to the true width?
Well, yeah, I think we reported that they're about 90%. We're sort of being cautious, but reality is we expected to drill these based on the modeling, because we have a small mine on surface that was mined in the 70s, the Fredriksson mine. And that mine had, basically we were able to look at some of the old maps from the mine and looked at some of the old drilling. We compiled that into a model, into a leapfrog model. And then so we projected this bed to continue down in this direction. So we basically planned the holes so that we drilled them fairly perpendicular to what we thought we were going to hit. And in fact, the thicknesses that we eventually hit were not far from what we were modeling. So we're very excited because obviously the modeling showed remarkable continuity and good grades, similar grades, maybe a little bit higher or just about the same as that was mined in the mine.
So you mentioned the potential with the magnetics there. So it could get bigger, but what excited you most was just kind of identifying what type of potential we have here. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that's true. Well, we like the hits. Don't get me wrong; they're fantastic hits. These. If this thing has any size, this could be a company maker. Because of the type of deposit, we're very excited because these things often tend to be very large. But also, it gives us this tremendous exploration trend that we can explore. Obviously, we need to go back to Fredriksson and continue to drill. And what we're excited about too is, we drilled the first hole and we had a really nice hit, about 10 meters. And then we stepped out about 40 meters laterally along that. If you see that figure, it looks like a tongue. So we went sort of to the side of the tongue at about the same elevation, and we actually hit a thicker unit, 13.6 meters. So obviously, what we need to do is continue to step out and see if that is actually a sheet of mineralization rather than just the tongue that we model. The only reason the leapfrog models a tongue is because it only utilizes the information it knows. But that thing could continue, and of course, if the second hole along that trend is thicker, you would think that we have that it's getting better, right?
And so you can drill shallower holes, which means less expensive and possibly add tons versus having to go at depth.
Absolutely. I mean, these holes were maybe 130 to 150 meters in depth, which is not very deep. And it's wide open. It's actually open in both directions. And at depth, of course, it's wide open at depth. But right now, we don't have to drill deeper holes. We just have to continue to march along the trend and see how far it goes.
So, Pat, you said this could be a company maker. Market cap right now is lower than past years. You were looking at something like Canadian 15 million or something like that. So any forward-looking-ish statement you can make with this still being within the realm of what the regulators want with what you see so far?
Well, the reality is that I've always believed that we were hugely undervalued. Part of it had to do with market conditions in the last few years. We were busy drilling and finding things, and we were just not being looked at by anybody. And I think that now, I think people are starting to recognize the value. We did that financing back in August, at 5.5 cents. And we've traded up to, in the recent past, up to 11 cents. I think that if these results don't get the stock much higher, then we just have to keep plugging. But it is going to attract attention, I think, from the big companies. What we were drilling before probably targeted the mid-tier producers, those kinds of companies. But this thing, could eventually attract some of the big players, the BHPs of this world.
And the next step would be drilling in a few months or financing first. Can you give us an idea of what we should expect next?
Yeah, well, we'll likely have to do financing, and so we want to see some response to these results, and then obviously go and raise some more money. And I know there's a number of investors that have approached us that like what we're doing, and I think these results will give a lot of people the urge to invest and help us to continue to drill.
And are you the 100% owner of this project?
Yes, we are. Yeah, we own the Gunsport project 100%. It does have a royalty. EMX has a royalty on it, and of 3%, which eventually we could buy down to 2%. But they're one of our biggest shareholders and also one of our big supporters. They've invested in us all along, and we consider them a real good strategic partner.
You also last week had some results from Ostra Silverberg. You want to briefly give us your CEO thoughts on this?
Sure. So Ostra Silverberg, it's we had some good results. There were some good high grades that came back from the drilling. Some of the widths were narrower, but that's the nature of VMSs, volcanogenic massive sulfides. They're irregular. They can be potty. They pinch and swell. So on any VMS project, you're going to hit some good. You're going to have a few programs that are good, some that are not so good. I would consider these a little bit kind of on the neutral. I think there's probably a mine there, but this is not going to kill it. It's not like it's finished. And so I think they were okay results. And but really, I think the bright lights should be going to the Fredriksson project. It's in the same property, but we have several projects in the property. So that we need to chase. We already talk about the Valver J and Lower J projects, and that also is a VMS, and that needs a lot of testing. But I think initially we probably want to concentrate on the Fredriksson, just because it's, there's a good possibility that it has more continuity. It has great thicknesses. So you could develop a deposit there fairly quickly.
All right. To learn more about the company, go to NordenCrownMetals.com. It trades on the OTC and also on the Venture Exchange in Toronto. And I will link to both of all that information in the show notes. Pat, thanks for coming on the show and providing this update.
Thanks for having me again, Bill. All the best.